Have you ever felt like a stranger in the very house you grew up in? There I was, standing on the porch of my own childhood, holding the same keys my mom always hid under the blue flower pot. The same house where I took my first steps, where I celebrated birthdays, where she taught me never to lower my head for anyone. But that day, my sister opened the door and said, "You don't live here anymore." Mom left everything to me. No hug. Not even a look. Just the door closing in my face, and the brutal realization that I was alone in the world. That night, I slept in my car. Just me and a suitcase full of clothes. But what no one knew, is that my mother left me something far more valuable than any inheritance. A secret tucked away in the back of an old closet. Something that would change everything, and bring justice, even after her death. If you've ever been emotionally disinherited by your own family, stay with me until the end. Because what I found in that house may change the way you see your own story too. The sky was gray on the day of the funeral. That kind of dull, heavy gray that doesn't cry, but doesn't smile either. It felt like even the weather was unsure of how to feel. I stood alone, slightly apart from the others, wearing the same black coat my mom had given me on my 40th birthday. The sleeves were worn, the lining frayed, but it was the only thing that still made me feel wrapped in her arms. Surrounded by familiar faces that now felt like strangers, that worn-out coat was my silent armor. All eyes were on my sister, Claire. She held the urn with Mom's ashes like it was a trophy. Sobbing loudly, almost theatrically. Her eyes watery but her lipstick flawless. Uncles, cousins, childhood friends, gathered around her, offering tissues, hugs, comfort. Acting like she had lost everything. As if I had never even existed. Me? I was just a bothersome presence. A living reminder of a story no one wanted to tell. No one said, "I'm sorry." No discreet nods. Not even a glance. The message was suffocatingly clear. They had buried me long before they buried her. And the cruelest part. I knew it. To most of them, I was the ungrateful daughter. The one who left. Who never called. Who abandoned her. No one knew about the sleepless nights. The bills I quietly paid. The visits I made unannounced, just to check if she was sleeping peacefully. But Claire knew. And she chose to tell only the part of the story that made her look good. When the ceremony ended, people slowly walked toward their cars. Some still wiping tears, others already whispering about lunch plans. I stayed still, staring at the small patch of ground where they left the flowers. It was a beautiful tribute. But cold. As if Mom was just a distant memory, and not a complex, layered woman known only by those who truly stayed close. That's when Claire approached me. She walked with purpose. Confident. Holding a white envelope in her hand. For a moment, just one, my heart sped up. Maybe it was something from Mom. A letter. A goodbye. A final note meant for me. But no. She handed it to me like it was a flyer for a dentist. Didn't even look me in the eye. "You need to clear out Mom's room by Friday," she said. "This house is mine now. She left everything to me. I want to start renovations soon." I stood there, holding that paper like it was a weapon pointed straight at my chest. The world around me faded. Like I was falling into a hole only I could see. "You're kicking me out of the house we were born in?" I asked, my voice small. "No. I'm just following her wishes," she replied, in that cold, robotic tone Claire always used when she wanted to sound superior. "And if I want to see the will?" "Talk to the lawyer," she said with a smug smile. Then she turned around without waiting for a response. I was left standing alone on the sidewalk. Surrounded by wilting funeral wreaths and memories that crushed my chest. Every window in that house held a part of my childhood. Mom's laughter from the kitchen. The smell of fresh bread on Sunday mornings. Nights we'd fall asleep watching old movies on the couch. And now all of it had been ripped away by a single signature on a stamped piece of paper. That day, I realized grief was just another excuse to take away the little I had left. But what Claire didn't know was that Mom was never one to give everything away so easily. She had a quiet way of hiding what mattered most. A way of leaving clues, only for those who paid close attention. And I was the only one who knew where to look. My name is Helen Carter. I'm 58 years old. And for almost 6 decades, I was the one people forgot to mention. Not out of cruelty, at least not in the beginning. It's just that I was always the quiet daughter. The one who never caused trouble. Who didn't interrupt conversations. Who learned to swallow her tears so she wouldn't bother anyone. Claire, my sister, was born 7 years after me. And from the moment she took her first breath, it was like the world shifted its orbit. She was all sparkle and sunshine. Bright eyes, golden hair that seemed made to draw attention. Mom used to say I was the responsible one. But Claire was the charming one. Over time, those labels became roles. While Claire dreamed of ballet lessons and studying in Paris, I was washing dishes and helping Mom care for Dad, who had been in fragile health since I was 17. When I was 22, Dad passed away. And that day, without anyone saying it out loud, I became the guardian of the house. Claire was still a teenager. I was the adult who stayed. I stayed to pay the bills. I stayed to care for Mom when she had her first stroke. I stayed when I had to drop out of my history degree because there just wasn't enough money. I stayed, and slowly, I disappeared. Mom was a woman of few words and quiet gestures. She could be stern at times, but never unfair. She didn't say, "I love you," but she'd make me chamomile tea when I came home exhausted from work. She'd hang my towel on the line with lavender soap, because she knew I loved that scent. Over the years, our relationship became routine. Sunday lunches. Old movies at night. Doctor appointments during the week. But even then, no one noticed. The family only saw Claire, who would show up every couple of months with a bouquet in hand, take selfies with Mom, and post them with captions like, "Grateful for every moment with her sparkling heart." Then she'd disappear again to her ocean view condo. I never wanted applause. Just acknowledgement. A sincere look. A simple, "thank you." Instead, I got judgment disguised as advice. "You should get out more, Helen. You could still get married, you know. Why don't you take a little break and go on a trip?" As if caring for your own mother was some sort of failure or lack of ambition. But what hurt the most wasn't the silence from others. It was the silence I accepted, for years. And now, with Mom buried, I was treated like an unwelcome guest in my own story. The house I had lived in for nearly 6 decades had a new owner. And she wore heels and urgency, eager to tear down walls that still smelled like our childhood. But what no one knew, not even Claire, was that Mom was never predictable. She had her own quiet ways of hiding what mattered. Very few knew how to read her. But I did. Because I stayed. And when you stay, you learn to hear what others never even notice. I went back to the house the day after the funeral. Claire hadn't changed the locks yet. She was so sure of her control over everything that it didn't even cross her mind I might come back uninvited. I waited for silence. Her car was gone. The gate slightly open. I took a deep breath before stepping in. The hydrangeas by the garden were wilting, and the grass had started growing wild, like the house itself was grieving. I walked through each room like I was entering sacred ground, forgotten, but sacred. Every piece of furniture held stories. Every photo on the wall was a mirror of times so far gone they ached. I passed the kitchen, the hallway where we used to listen to music together. And finally, I reached her bedroom. There was something holy about that room. Even with the faint scent of mold beginning to take over, I could still smell her perfume, roses, with a soft, woody note. The bed was made. The armchair in the corner covered with her hand-embroidered shawl. And there, just behind it, the old wardrobe with the little blue key. She always said the lock was just for decoration. But I knew it wasn't. My hand trembled as I knelt to find the brooch box. It was exactly where it was supposed to be, in the nightstand drawer, nestled between old letters and a scribbled pharmacy note. At the bottom of the box was the tiny blue key, still attached to a yellow ribbon. Mom always said details mattered. I turned the key. The click echoed through the room like a secret being set free. Inside the wardrobe, there were no jewels. No keepsakes. Just a worn-out cardboard box with a loose lid. Inside it, a stack of neatly arranged papers. And on top, an envelope. Beige. My name handwritten on it. Helen, open only when you feel lost. For a moment, all I could do was stare at the words. Mom's handwriting was still firm, still graceful, as if she'd written it yesterday. I sat gently on the edge of her bed. Felt the mattress dip under my weight, the very same spot she'd slept in for over 40 years. With the envelope in my lap, I knew this wasn't just a letter. It was a final whisper. A last act of love. I opened it slowly, like it was a sacred relic. My dearest daughter. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And something inside you is trying to make sense of why things turned out the way they did. I want you to know, I never stopped loving you. What I lacked was the courage to say it. The time to show it. But never the feeling itself. You were my companion. My strength. My quiet comfort. And I needed to leave something for you, not out of pity, but justice. The will Claire has is incomplete. I made another. The real one. It's registered officially. Dolores Mendez has it. She'll know what to do when you bring her this letter. If Claire tried to push you out of the house, it's because she knows you're the only one who truly saw me. Helen, don't let them erase your story. You are stronger than you think. With eternal love. Mom. By the time I finished reading, the tears fell freely. But they weren't just from grief. They were from relief. From finally being seen. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. Mom saw me. Until the very end, she saw me. And there, in the silence of her room, with the scent of old wood and that envelope pressed to my chest, I stopped being the forgotten daughter. And for the first time in years, a fire lit inside me. A fire called justice. The next morning, I woke up in the small guest room at Ruth's house, my childhood friend who opened her door when I had nowhere else to go. She didn't ask questions. She simply handed me a mug of tea and said, "Stay as long as you need, Helen. But don't let this swallow you. You deserve more. You deserve more." It was the first time I'd heard those words out loud. And the first time I actually believed them. With the letter in my hand and the old address of Mrs. Dolores Mendez law office plugged into my GPS, I walked toward the city center. A light rain fell. One of those drizzles that doesn't soak your clothes but drowns your thoughts. When I arrived, I stood for a moment in front of the polished wooden door. Her name was engraved in gold. Dolores Mendez, Family Law. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The receptionist looked at me, surprised, maybe because of my soaked coat, or maybe because of the expression on my face. Before I could say a word, a voice called from the back office. "Helen Carter. Please, come in." Dolores sat behind a desk stacked with folders. Her gray hair was pulled back neatly. Her eyes calm but alert. She looked at me with a mix of kindness and clarity, like someone who's seen the world spin off its axis and still managed to stay grounded. Your mother trusted me. And she was very clear about what she wanted, she said as I sat down. I handed her the letter. She read it carefully. No shock. No questions. Just a nod, like she'd been waiting for this moment. The Real will was filed and registered. It's in my legal possession and can be presented to the judge immediately, along with your mother's letter as supporting evidence. Claire's going to lose her mind, I muttered, feeling my chest tighten. She will, Dolores replied, without sugarcoating. But this isn't about her feelings. It's about what's right. Do you want to go forward with this? I looked down at the letter. At my trembling hands resting in my lap. I thought about the years I'd swallowed silence. The cold stares. The sidewalk where I was cast out like an inconvenience. Yes, I said. For my mother, but mostly, for me. Dolores offered a faint smile. And just like that, the process began. But justice, contrary to what people say, doesn't bring peace right away. It brings turbulence first. Claire found out about the new will 2 days later, right after receiving the official notice. She called me immediately. You've lost your mind. You think you're getting anything out of this, Helen? Mom was weak, confused. She didn't know what she was doing. She was clear enough to know exactly who to trust, I replied, my voice steady. You're going to ruin your name, not mine. Maybe. But this time, you're not the only one telling the story. She hung up on me. And that's when the attacks began. Uncles. Cousins. Cold messages. A few words that pierced deeper than screams. One said. You already took everything you could from your mother while she was alive. Now you want what's left. Some just stopped talking to me altogether. The library where I worked received an anonymous letter asking for my removal, for ethical reasons. But no one realized something important. Every attempt to silence me only made me stronger. Ruth was the one who helped me with the next step. You always said you wanted to write. To publish something. I don't know if I have the talent, I replied. She looked at me over her teacup. Helen, you've spent your whole life writing in silence. Journals. Notes. Letters to your mother. It's time the world read them too. That's how the idea was born. I pulled out Mom's old notebooks, the notes she scribbled, the thoughts she never shared, the poems she jotted on scraps of paper, and I began typing. I wove in my own thoughts. My own memories. My pain. It felt like we were writing it together. I named the project Letters for the Silenced. I published it digitally. No expectations. But what came next felt like a collective hug. Messages began pouring in. This feels like my story. Thank you for saying what I never could. And for the first time. My voice echoed. The first time someone called me a writer, I thought it was a mistake. It came in a message from a reader I didn't know. She signed it simply as, D. Rocha. Your book healed me. For years, I thought my pain was mine alone. Thank you for writing what so many of us feel but never say. I read it out loud, alone in Ruth's tiny guest room. And I cried, as if I had just received an award. In that moment, I understood, I wasn't just writing. I was reclaiming myself. I was turning silence into testimony. The book began to spread on social media. A literature teacher from another city used passages in her classroom. I was invited to speak at a local literary event, seated at a table with women who, like me, had only found their voices after 50. I wasn't selling thousands of copies. But every one that reached a reader felt like a part of me reconnecting with the world. I was finally being read. And more importantly, I was finally being understood. Through it all, I started to rediscover parts of myself I had forgotten even existed. I began taking morning walks, just to feel the wind on my face. I changed my old haircut for something softer. I pulled out the blue dress my mother always said made my eyes look like the ocean, and I wore it, for a small book club gathering at a local cafe. There, surrounded by women who wore their scars like stories, I realized something. I wasn't the only one who had been forgotten in her own home. The pain of being erased was collective. But the rebirth could be collective too. During this time, the legal process moved forward. Claire fought back with everything she had: lawyers, arguments, even attempts to discredit my mother's mental state in her final months. But Miss Dolores stood firm. Every line of the alternate will was registered, dated, and legally certified. Mom's letter was authenticated by handwriting experts. Testimonies, including one from the nurse who cared for her in her last months, confirmed she was fully lucid and very intentional. And deep down, I knew Claire had already lost long before the verdict. Not because of the will, but because I no longer needed her approval. Or the family's. Or anyone's. The Helen they once knew, the quiet one, the submissive one, the daughter who stayed silent, no longer existed. In her place stood a woman with a voice. With a story. With presence. The social media page I created for the book became a meeting place. Hundreds of comments every week. Letters. Interview requests. And one day, I received a message from a small publishing house. "Helen, your writing has soul. We'd love to relaunch the book with a new edition. And maybe, publish your next one." I read that message and cried. Not because I felt validated. But because for the first time, I felt alive. All of this began with that letter. That wardrobe with the little blue key. That mother who didn't know how to say, "I love you," out loud. But shouted it with actions when it mattered most. She left me more than a house. She left me permission. Permission to take up space. To exist outside the shadows. To bloom, even after the longest winter of my life. The day the judge officially validated Mom's will felt strange. No applause. No fireworks. Just a dry stamp on paper and a silence that seemed to mark the end of a long, painful chapter. But for me, it was the sound of justice finally being done. The house, the one that had once been the setting of my exclusion, was now legally mine. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a victory over Claire. It felt like a victory over everything I'd been taught to swallow. Claire, however, wasn't ready to back down so easily. She showed up 2 days later. She looked different. More subdued. Maybe more tired. Or maybe just annoyed that she didn't win. She rang the doorbell insistently. When I opened the door, she was holding a folder, and wearing a smile I knew all too well. Fake. Polished. Rehearsed. "Helen," she said, as if we were suddenly close again. "Can we talk?" I considered not letting her in. But I took a breath. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. Not even angry. Just indifferent. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside. She walked in slowly, her heels echoing on the old wooden floor Mom never let anyone replace. She sat in the same armchair where Mom used to spend her afternoons reading. Claire crossed her legs, opened the folder. Papers. Spreadsheets. And a rehearsed speech. "I know the judge confirmed everything. I'm not here to fight that. I just thought maybe we could split things. You have the house, the car, Mom's notebooks." She paused, waiting for a reaction. And I take care of the documents and numbers. Like I always did. It could be good for both of us. No more damage, no more court. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For years, my life had been made of silent concessions. Of, just let it go. Of, it's not worth the fight. But now. I had something I never had before. Clarity. Claire, I began, calmly, you've spent your whole life treating me like a tolerated inconvenience. And now you want to share what you tried to steal by force. She pressed her lips together. That's not fair. It is, I cut her off. You kicked me out on the day of our mother's funeral. As if I were a stranger. And even now, you're not here for me. You're here for what you think you can still control. She went quiet. The truth is, Claire, you lost something far more valuable than assets. You lost the trust of the only person who stood by your side, and who you never truly saw. Claire lowered her eyes. Not out of guilt. But because she had no more excuses. I don't hate you, I finished. But my answer is no. I'm not splitting what was left to me out of love. Not out of guilt. And certainly not out of manipulation. She took a long breath. Took a few seconds to stand up. You've changed, she said, trying to smile. No, I replied. I just stopped hiding. Claire left without another word. No shouting. No threats. Just silence. As if, for the first time, she understood I was no longer the invisible sister. And as the door closed behind her, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. As if even the walls of the house knew. The cycle was finally broken. Today, the house breathes differently. The curtains my mother sewed by hand are still there, but now, they dance in the morning breeze. The radio plays old songs, not as a nostalgic ache, but as a quiet ritual of love for the past. I turned Claire's old room into a small writing studio. And there, between books, tea mugs, and colorful sticky notes, stories are born. Stories of women like me. Women who were silenced for decades, and finally decided to speak. The book, Letters for the Silenced, became more than just a personal project. It became a bridge. Thousands of readers across the country. Some write me real letters, in envelopes, with perfume, just like my mother would have done. Others send Instagram messages saying they've left bad marriages, finally stood up to abusive siblings, or simply started writing again after 30 years. I respond to each one. Because I know what it feels like not to be answered. The other day, I was invited to speak at a public school event. I went, wearing my blue dress and a voice that still trembled a little. At the end of the talk, a young girl, maybe 18, approached me with tears in her eyes. She said, "Thank you for reminding me that I can start over, even though I'm young. And thank you for showing me there's no such thing as being too old to finally stop staying silent." It broke me. In the best possible way. And that's when I realized. What my mother left me, was far greater than a house or any possessions. She left me a mission. And I, who spent a lifetime being everyone else's support, was now my own foundation. Not out of pride. But out of liberation. Now, I place fresh flowers in the corner of the living room where Mom used to sit. And sometimes, I close my eyes, and I can almost hear her voice whispering. "Now, Helen. Now, you're truly living." And I am. Without fear. Without apologizing for existing. Without trying to shrink myself to fit anyone else's mold. And if you, listening to this story, have ever felt forgotten, excluded, or invisible, know this with all my heart. You are not alone. You are not too small. And it is never too late. Sometimes, the key to your freedom is sitting in an old closet, just waiting for you to find the courage to unlock it. If this story touched your heart, leave a like. It helps me keep sharing more stories like this. Comment below. Have you ever experienced something similar? Which part moved you the most? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe to her journey for more real, emotional, and transformative stories like this one. Click on the final screen now and choose your next story. There's so much more life waiting for you. Her journey, because your voice deserves to be heard.